fucking boats! Boats, yes. Not ships, boats. Now, I think everyone needs to take their nipples off, stick them in some cold water, add some ice to the water, add a pinch of salt to increase the melting point of water. That's it. That will allow your nipples to get colder even quickly. So you can take and fucking chill, okay? Cool your tits. Now, everyone take a step back and actually breathe before ranting and raving. Okay, so as most of you probably have heard by now from every single War Thunder YouTuber, they're like, oh shit, but I've got to make that video about boats now. Quickly, we've got to cover that content and give my thoughts and opinions. Which I actually was considering too, and I only didn't because I'm pretty lazy, as you might have seen in the last week. Not that many videos. Anyway, the purpose of this video is just for everyone to relax. War Thunder announced ships yesterday, but to the disappointment of everyone, the ships they announced aren't really the ships they wanted. They were expecting big behemoth battleships, destroyer and battleship class kind of stuff. And what we got was pretty much patrol boats, and slightly slower patrol boats. But it's okay, just wait. Well, I'm not paid by Gaijin, I don't know anything about Gaijin, and I could totally be wrong. But from all the information I've been reading about it, including from the official forums, the official dev did a follow-up response about the announcement, and also on Reddit, the community manager that occasionally pokes his head in through r/WarThunder, they're just trying to say this is the first step. I think that they are still trying to figure out what the gameplay is actually going to be like, because they're in a bit of a pickle when it comes to warships. War Thunder strives to be realistic, and I put that in quotation marks, but it is fairly realistic, and it does try to appeal to a wide audience by, well, it's pretty niche, but also wide, by having arcade mode that can just apply to every Tom, Dick and Harry. But when it comes to realistic and sim is where the meat of the game is at, that is for those hardcore World War II milsim fans that just masturbate pictures of Rommel all day. Or depending on which faction you masturbate to, whoever, whatever you support anyway. See, there's a little problem that War Thunder strives for realism. And I know realism. Realism in giant quotation marks. But if you do think about it, they do try to get the stats of actual planes and then put them into in-game models. They try to do the models correctly, and they try to do the stats at the planes realistically with semi-realistic physics. They try their best for that, including the damage models. But when you try and do ships, this kind of gets a bit more difficult, because in real life, battleships and, cruise is a bit far. Anyway, big ships took long times to get stuff done. Battleships may one-shot enemy ships after, admittedly that's the same for tanks, but it took days and hours to get... Well, there's a big difference between that as well. It took very long time. It was all about kind of positioning when it came to actual naval warfare. And while people do like spending loads of time navigating and maneuvering into the correct position before the engagement, people like to do that with tank battles as well. Getting your tank destroyer into the optimum position on a hill or trying to flank to get... But in a tank battle, it might take, up to 10 minutes most, whereas real life, you might expect to travel like an hour into the combat zone and fire out of ranges you can't even see with some of the capital ships. That isn't really very fun though. But it's realistic, but it's not fun. And Gaijin is trying to balance fun with realism when it comes to battleships. They're a bit of a pickle. They could speed up battleships and make them faster, which will allow for them to do, a bit more closer combat, to dodge incoming fire, and just allow them to fly at closer ranges. But if they make them faster, what about some of the planes, especially around tier 1, tier 2? How will those planes be able to compete with boats that are moving exceptionally fast? And so I think that by just putting in patrol boats for now, and essentially just a tier 1 barge with a gun on it, they're experimenting with the idea. They want to know what they actually want their game mode to be. Because we know that Gaijin does eventually want to make a game mode which does incorporate tanks, ships, and planes. That's what they're striving for. It could be World War mode, but that's a different story altogether. But we know from realistic tank battles, they invite the concept of planes joining in the fight for combined forces. And they're probably thinking, how can ships be useful when also fighting over territory? They want ships to be able to counter planes in ways, ships to counter other ships, planes to counter ships. Oh no, that's not what I'm talking about. Gaijin is just trying to develop this game mode, and I think that they don't know what they're doing. Because I'm going to give it to them. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I'm not a game designer, but how would you incorporate ships? Make them realistic, but also fun. I mean, you could have them traveling, 2 hours to get in position before a fight and shoot further than they can see, but it isn't really that fun. So I'm guessing they're working with smaller boats, which will also be easier to design the models of, because we know tank models are, they're superb. They're very well designed. The models of them are just perfect. The art department at Gaijin nails everything. Mostly. Some of the older stuff needs a little touching up, but definitely the new vehicles are beautiful. So I'm assuming with patrol boats, they're pretty easy to design. I mean, they're not massive compared to some destroyers. The detail doesn't have to be that great. And as you saw in the trailer, the detail of the larger ships isn't really that good at the moment. But it's placeholder. It's going to be in a closed beta? No. Yeah, it must be beta. It can't be alpha. Alpha's like within internal development, so it has to be closed beta. When it's in closed beta, they're probably going to start adding things, like more explosive effects, damage models. They probably want to figure out what they want to do for damage models as well. Do they want it to be possible just to penetrate ships and kill them in one shot easily? Then again, you do have it for tanks as well. I mean, you can just be one shot in a tank and that's it, game over. So it's just kind of got to be balancing. I mean, like, firing 10 miles out is not that fun though. Or maybe it will be. Maybe they'll figure out a way to make it fun. Because they know they don't want to be World of Warships. World of Warships is an arcadey game. They like this old history shit, and they like to make it a bit more realistic. It isn't fully realistic, but they like to make the damage models, the ballistics, the damage... Where am I going with this? Just wait and see what Gaijin's doing, alright? They're bringing out tier 1 boats, then they'll bring out some better tier 1 boats, then they'll think like, do we have the money for battleships? In fact, that's another thing I used to talk about on stream. I was thinking, say for example, I'm going to use the God Awful example of the Tiger again. If Gaijin wants to make a new Tiger, a premium Tiger, alright, just imagine this, a new tank from scratch. They want to make a new premium tank. They look at the tank they want, they go for the history, they go for the records, they find what they want, pictures, design specs, and they go through that, they put together a tank, and say if that takes, 10 working days to put together, which is a ballpark. I know nothing about game design. When you look at some of the battleships, they're massive, and we know that Gaijin likes to put good detail into the stuff they work with. If you're going to put a battleship together, that might take a bit more than 10 days art design. But then you're left with another question as well. If it takes 10 days to build a tank, and you can sell the tank for, £20 in your store, and you're going to sell the battleship for 20 quid, but it took you, 50 days to make. Do you really want to make battleships if it's like the same amount of demand for tanks? But then again, you're also doing a niche which hasn't really been done before. There are plenty of tanking games out there. I mean, War Thunder and World of Tanks are just the biggest ones. But when it comes to ships, there are loads of old-ish ship combat games, but they aren't really that good. And also, graphics are pretty outdated. So, will Gaijin want to produce capital ships, which could cost a lot of money to produce, is another speculation of mine. I don't know. Maybe they will just stick to smaller cruisers for now. Or maybe they won't even make capital ships. We do not know. The whole point of this video has been mostly my speculation on maybe their thoughts or decisions behind just sticking with tier 1 stuff, which is what I'll emphasize. I think they will do more over time. When they figure out the game modes or how they're going to work, what is the gameplay mechanics that are going to be behind what's going on, they will start designing the game. They'll make the units when they're appropriate. We do not know. But eventually, we will know. And Gaijin will figure out what they're doing. They'll make ships. They'll add probably bigger ships eventually. At least I hope so. That's it. That's all I gotta say. Too long didn't watch. Just chill your tits and wait to see what happens. That's pretty much all I have to say. Thanks for watching.
Like, comment and subscribe, or I'll break your f***ing legs.